She prayed barefoot for my success, whispering my name in every dua. But when I finally achieved it, I told the world, she never stood by me, forgetting the only person who truly believed in me. I need to get this out before I lose what's left of my sanity. My name is Omar, and I destroyed the only person who ever truly believed in me. This isn't a story asking for sympathy. This is a confession. A warning. Maybe both. 3 years ago, I was nobody. Failed business ventures, maxed credit cards, living in Amira's tidy apartment, while she worked double shifts at the hospital as a nurse. Every morning at 4 a.m., I'd wake to find her on the prayer rug in our cramped living room, barefoot on the cold tile, whispering my name in her dollahs. Allah, give Omar strength. Help him find his path. Make his dreams reality. I used to pretend I was still asleep, watching her through half-closed eyes. She'd pray for 20 minutes, asking for nothing for herself. Just me. Always me. When I finally landed that contract with the tech startup, when everything started turning around, when the money began flowing, something crept into my head. Success made me forget who I was when I had nothing. The company parties started getting fancier. The clients were impressed by the young entrepreneur who pulled himself by his bootstraps. They loved my story about grinding alone, about the sleepless nights building my empire. I never mentioned Amira. Not once. When Forbes wanted to do a feature on young Muslim entrepreneurs, they asked about my support system. I talked about my parents, my university professors, my mentors. I made Amira invisible. In my head, I convinced she was just there. Like furniture. Like something that happened to me, instead of someone who chose to love me when loving me was hard. The interviews started getting bigger, the speaking engagements multiplied, and every single time, I erased her from my origin story. How did manage during the tough times? Discipline, prayer, focus. I learned to depend only on lies. All lies. Amira would watch these interviews from our couch. Now our expensive couch in our expensive apartment that her prayers helped manifest. And I'd see something in her eyes each time. She never said anything. Just smiled that patient smile, and went back to her nursing shifts. Still praying for me every morning. Still whispering my name like I deserved her devotion. The worst part. I started believing my own fabricated narrative. I actually began thinking I did it alone. That her sacrifices were just background noise. That her love was something I was entitled to. Not something I was blessed with. Then came the Harvard Business Review article. The photographer wanted shots of my humble beginnings. I took them to my old neighborhood, to the coffee shop where I used to write my business plan. But I made sure Amira was working that day. Made sure she wasn't in any frame that might suggest I ever needed anyone. The article called me self-made. I smiled for the camera and let them use that word. That night, Amira confronted me. Not yelling, not screaming, just tired. Omar. Why don't ever mention me? I had my answer ready. I'd been preparing it for months. This is business. People want to hear about individual achievement. Adding personal details muddles the message. She stared at me for a long time. I prayed out of poverty, Omar. I believed in when didn't believe in. I worked extra shifts to keep us afloat while chased dreams. And now are telling the world did it alone. Something cruel rose in me. Success had poisoned my soul. And I didn't even recognize it happening. Maybe that's because I did do it alone. We're just living, working job. I was the one taking risks, making connections, building something. The moment those words left my mouth, I knew I'd crossed a line I couldn't uncross. Amira's face went completely blank. Not angry. Just empty. Okay, she whispered. That should have been my wake call. That flat, defeated, okay. Should have made me fall to my knees and beg forgiveness. Instead, it made me feel vindicated. Like I'd finally told her a truth she needed to hear. I was so on my own success, so high on my fabricated independence narrative, that I didn't recognize I was destroying the foundation my entire was built on. The next week, Amira started praying differently. I could hear her in the morning. But my name wasn't in her du'as anymore. She was asking Allah for guidance, for strength, for clarity. She was praying her way out of loving me. And I was too narcissistic to realize what was happening until it was too late. I can't sleep. I can't eat. I keep reading comments from my last post. And are all right. I was a monster. But it gets worse. So much worse. After that conversation where I basically told Amira she didn't matter, something shifted in our house. She became polite. Distant. Professional. She still cooked dinner. Still kept the house clean. Still went to work. But the warmth was gone. The woman who used to light when I walked through the door, now barely looked from her phone. I told this was better. Less pressure. Less emotional weight. I could focus on my empire building without someone constantly needing attention. God. I was such an. The speaking engagements kept coming. TED Talks, university commencements, business conferences. My signature story was always the same. How I built $1 million company from nothing. The crowds ate it. Standing ovations every time. I learned that success requires sacrifice. Have to be willing to stand alone, trust vision, and never let anyone else's limitations become ceiling. Pure. But it felt so good hearing thousands of people applaud my wisdom. Meanwhile, Amira started working extra shifts again. Not for us this time. For herself. She was saving money, though I didn't realize why yet. The breaking point came during my biggest speaking engagement yet. A Fortune 500 conference in Dubai. 2,000 attendees, live streaming to millions. The topic self-made success in the digital age. I was backstage, pumped, rehearsing my lines about individual determination and self-reliance. My phone buzzed. Text from Amira. Mother had a. She's at City General. Thought should know. My mother. The woman who raised me. In the hospital. And my first thought wasn't about rushing to be with her. My first thought was, this can't mess my speech. I texted back. How bad? Can it wait? Amira's response came instantly. Mother is asking for. She can't speak properly. But sure, Omar. Speech is definitely more important. I stared at that message for 30 seconds. Then I put my phone away and walked on stage. The speech went perfectly. Standing ovation. 3 business cards from potential clients worth millions. I felt like I was on top of the world. Until I got to the hospital 6 hours later. My mother's left side was paralyzed. Her speech was slurred. But when she saw me walk into that room, her eyes filled with tears of relief. Omar. Habibi. She struggled to say. Amira was sitting beside her bed, holding her hand. She'd been there for 8 hours. 8 hours while I was basking in applause and talking about self-made success. Where were? My mother whispered in Arabic. I looked at Amira. She was staring at me with something I'd never seen in her eyes before. Complete disgust. He was changing the world, Mama. Amira said quietly in Arabic. He was teaching people how to succeed without needing anyone. The venom in her voice could have killed me. That night, I tried to explain to Amira. Tried to tell her the speech was too important. Too many people counting on me. Too much money at stake. She listened in silence. Then she said something that shattered me. Omar, when we're broke and desperate, used to say that family was everything. That success meant nothing if couldn't share it with people love. Remember man. I did remember him. Vaguely. Like a stranger I used to know. That man is dead, she continued. Killed him. And I can't love his replacement. I wanted to argue. Wanted to defend. But looking at her face, I realized she was right. I had become someone unrecognizable. Someone who prioritized strangers' applause over my mother's medical emergency. Amira, I can change. I can be better. She shook her head. No, Omar. Had a choice tonight between being a son and being a brand. Chose brand. I'll always choose brand now. The next morning, I found divorce papers on the kitchen counter. I stared at them like they were written in a foreign language. We're really doing this? I asked when she came out of the bedroom with a suitcase. I prayed for 3 years that Allah would bless with success. She said, not looking at me. I never prayed that success would curse, with arrogance. But that's what happened. And I won't watch destroy anymore. But I love, I said. And for the first time in months, I meant it. She finally looked at me then. Really looked at me. The man I loved would never have missed his mother's for a speaking fee. The man I loved would never pretend his wife didn't exist. The man I loved is gone, Omar. And I can't mourn him while living with his replacement. She walked toward the door, then turned back one last time. By the way, that Forbes article are so proud of. I kept the rough draft in the trash 2 years ago. The one where mentioned me in every other paragraph. Where called me anchor and inspiration. I read it sometimes to remember who used to be. The door closed behind her with a soft click. I ran to the window and watched her load her car. At the last second, she looked at our apartment. Our eyes met through the glass. She mouthed 2 words, "I'm sorry." She was apologizing to me. For leaving. For not being strong enough to save me from. That's when I finally understood what I lost. This is my last post. After this, I'm deleting my account, and probably disappearing from social media entirely. I'll understand why. The divorce papers were just the beginning of my destruction. For the first week after Amira left, I convinced I was better off. No more guilt tricks about missing family dinners for business meetings. No more feeling obligated to include someone else in my success story. I was finally free to be the self-made entrepreneur I'd always claimed to be. I into work harder than ever. Signed 3 new clients. Booked 5 more speaking engagements. My company's valuation hit 8 figures. Then my mother died. The second came 10 days after the first. I was in a board meeting when my cousin called. By the time I got to the hospital, she was gone. I stood in that sterile hallway, staring at the room where my mother's body lay. And the first person I wanted to call was Amira. The person who'd held my mother's hand while I was on stage talking about individual achievement. The person who'd loved my mother like her own daughter. But I'd lost the right to lean on her. The funeral was small. Family, the few neighbors, some people from the mosque. I gave a eulogy about my mother's strength, her sacrifices, her unwavering belief in her children. Amira came. She sat in the back, cried silently, and left before I could speak to her. That's when the walls started closing in. Because grief has a way of making see things clearly. And what I saw was that every meaningful relationship in my had been built on my mother's foundation and Amira's love. Without them, I was just a successful stranger in an expensive suit. My business partners respected me, but they didn't know me. My clients valued my services, but they wouldn't visit me in the hospital. My social media followers celebrated my wins, but they'd disappear the moment I showed weakness. I had built an empire on shifting sand. The speaking engagements continued. But now, standing on those stages, talking about self-reliance and individual success, I felt like because I wasn't self-made, I was woman-made, mothered, community-made. And I'd systematically destroyed everyone who'd made me. 3 months after my mother's funeral, I was scheduled for another big conference. Success without compromise was my topic. The irony was suffocating. I was backstage, scrolling through my phone, to calm my nerves, when I saw it. Amira's engagement announcement. She was marrying Dr. Hassan, a cardiologist she'd met at the hospital. The photo showed them together. Both in medical scrubs, both exhausted from a long shift, both glowing with the kind of quiet happiness I'd forgotten existed. But it was the caption that destroyed me. Found someone who sees my prayers as power, not performance. Someone who celebrates the woman behind the success, not just the success itself. Alhamdulillah for second chances at love. I stared at that post until my vision blurred. She'd found someone who valued what I'd taken for granted. Someone who saw her morning prayers as the foundation of their relationship, not an inconvenience to work around. That night, I got for the first time in years and did something unforgivable. I called her. Mar. Her voice was cautious. Concerned. I sought engagement. I slurred into the phone. Silence. He doesn't know like I know, I continued, the making me mean. He doesn't know that hum when nervous. That pray extra long when we're worried about someone. That, Amar stop. I made, Amira, before me, were just a nurse with dreams. I gave confidence. I taught to want more. The line went quiet for so long I thought she'd hung. Then, in the steadiest voice I'd ever heard from her. Omar. Right. Did change me. Taught me that love without respect is just possession. Taught me that someone can know every detail of heart and still choose to break it. Taught me that I deserved better than being someone's hidden blessing. She paused. Hassan mentions me in every interview about his work. He tells people his strength comes from Allah and from me. He's proud to love me publicly. He prays for us, not just for himself. Taught me the difference between a man who loves and a man who loves what do for him. Amira, please. Thank for showing me what I won't accept ever again. Goodbye, Omar. The dial tone echoed in my empty apartment. I canceled that speaking engagement. And the next one. And the one after that. Because how to stand on a stage and talk about success when I've lost everything that made success meaningful. My business started suffering. Without the speaking fees and the personal brand momentum, the company couldn't sustain its growth. Clients left. Employees quit. The 8-figure valuation became a 7-figure debt. I had to sell the apartment, the car, most of my possessions. I moved back to my childhood neighborhood, into a small studio above the same coffee shop, where I used to write my business plan, while Amira worked double shifts to keep us afloat. Full circle, except this time, there was no one praying for me, at 4 a.m. Yesterday, I walked past the mosque where Amira and I used to pray together during Ramadan. There was a banner outside advertising their community fundraiser for underprivileged students. The guest speaker was Dr. Hassan. I stood across the street and watched through the window as he addressed the crowd, confident, humble, purposeful. Everything I used to be before success poisoned me. And there, in the front row, was Amira. Pregnant now, her hand resting on her growing belly. She was looking at her husband with the same devotion she used to reserve for me. The same reverence I'd thrown away, because I thought I deserved it rather than earned it. Hassan finished his speech, and immediately walked to her, helped her stand, her forehead, and introduced her to the audience. My wife, Amira, is the real force behind everything I do. She's a nurse, a community volunteer, and the wisest person I know. None of my achievements mean anything without her partnership. The crowd applauded. Amira smiled that radiant smile I remembered, but it was different now. Confident, secure, loved properly. I watched them leave together, Hassan's hand protectively on her back, and I realized something that deeper than any divorce papers or failed business venture. She was finally receiving the love she'd always deserved. The love I was too arrogant to give her. I built a successful company, spoke on stages around the world, and accumulated wealth I'd only dreamed of as a broke 20-something. But I never learned the most important business principle of all: can't manufacture loyalty. Respect, or love, can only nurture what's freely given, and prayer worthy of the gift. Amira prayed barefoot on cold tile for 3 years, whispering my name to Allah like I was worth saving. And I repaid her faith by erasing her from the story of my salvation. Now I pray alone in this studio apartment, asking Allah to forgive me for wasting the most precious investment anyone ever made in me. But some mistakes echo forever, and some blessings don't come twice. I had everything a man could want, and I lost it all because I forgot that behind every self-made man is a woman who believed in him before he believed in himself.